Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. UK Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy has said that recognizing a Palestinian state would not create one overnight, and it must be part of a wider peace process, according to media reports. He further added that Prime Minister Keir Starmer will decide on the issue later today, as UK seeks to keep the prospects of a two-state solution alive. Israel has continued its barrage-expanding military on Gaza City with a goal of sieging the city entirely. As reports from Gaza Health Minister says, 60 Palestinians have been killed, and as Hamas continues to warn that the Israeli hostages' lives are at risk. Ukrainian shelling attack has killed one woman in Russia's Belgorod region as it struck a civilian house, according to Regional Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov. The border region has faced regular strikes since the Ukraine and Russia's war started in 2022. President Donald Trump has announced a new plan to impose a $100,000 fee on H-1B visas, a move that could severely impact the U.S. tech industry. Major companies, including Microsoft and JP Morgan, have warned visa holders to stay in the U.S. or return quickly, according to media reports. A U.S.-China agreement will give ByteDance just one of 7 board seats in TikTok's new U.S. entity, with Americans holding the other 6, while control of the app's algorithm will not be under ByteDance. Now, President Donald Trump is facing a deadline set by Congress to shut down the app in the U.S. unless sold, is pushing this deal to preserve TikTok's access to its 170 million U.S. users. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has organized a day of military training for civilians amid new threats from U.S. President Donald Trump and a massive American naval deployment of 7 ships, F-35 fighter jets, as well as a nuclear submarine in the Caribbean. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez has accused Washington of waging an undeclared war. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said that he will condemn Israel's massacres in Gaza at the UN General Assembly and push for wider recognition of Palestine to advance a two-state solution. He further added that his U.S. trip will include talks with President Donald Trump, as well as a meeting with Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa. Chinese citizen journalist Zhang Zhang, a 42-year-old whose reporting documented the pandemic's early days. He was first jailed in 2024 reporting on COVID-19 in Wuhan, has been sentenced to an additional 4 years in prison on the same charge of picking quarrels and provoking trouble, according to Reports Without Borders. A significant shift in international diplomacy is to be seen at the upcoming United Nations General Assembly meet, as several countries announced their intention to recognize a Palestinian state ahead of the meeting. The UK and Portugal are set to announce the recognition of a Palestinian state, while other Western powers like France, Canada, Belgium, and Australia will also move ahead with similar plans. The ongoing Gaza conflict has led to a worsening humanitarian crisis, with famine and aid blockades worsening the conditions. Calls for Palestinian statehood have intensified, and the two-state solution remains top topic. Other key issues which will dominate the discussions at UNGA will be the continuation of Ukraine and Russia's war, as President Zelensky seeks more global support, and Iran's nuclear program. The leaders and diplomats will also focus on Syria's post-war reconstruction, climate action, and women's rights are also in the spotlight, along with the Sudan conflict and growing tensions between Venezuela and the U.S. Now, for this discussion, we are joined by Mohammed Osman. He's an international relations specialist, joins us live from Cairo. Thank you very much, Mohammed, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, how might this growing international recognition of Palestinian state influence the geopolitical dynamics at the upcoming UNGA.
Thank you for having me, Shuma. Greetings to you and to your honorable guest. Your dear audience. I think that the expanded recognition of the Palestinian statehood in the upcoming UN General Assembly summit will basically serve to be a huge moral boost to the Palestinian cause. It has great symbolic value. It will give more weight to the moral argument for a Palestinian state, and also to the legal rights of the legality and the legal legitimacy of the Palestinian cause and Palestinian rights in general, as the two-state solution has been the solution that has been accredited and approved by the international community at large, and has been codified in international law with a multitude of UN resolutions and also international agreements, including the Oslo Accords, for example. So, of course, this comes as a continuation of global efforts to enhance and further Palestinian rights in the midst of an onslaught on Palestine at this moment, as for the first time since 1948, the Palestinians themselves, and not only the Palestinian cause, the physical existence of the Palestinians themselves in their occupied Palestinian territories is in jeopardy, with Israel committing genocide and ethnic cleansing in the Gaza Strip, and even engaging in more and more slow ethnic cleansing in the West Bank, with the ultimate aim being the announced aim of the current Israeli government, or at least the far-right members of this governing coalition, is the displacement of the Palestinians out of what remains of their ancestral lands. 22% of historical Palestine is what is now Palestine, which is basically the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem. So even that, Israel wants to deny the Palestinians the right to exist and establish their state in, even though we have been in a very long peace process that has started arguably in 1991, which means we've been in this predicament for the past over 30 years, and yet it has yielded no meaningful results due to Israel's arrogance and the reluctance to engage in any real peace negotiations. So right now, as things stand, about a dozen countries are expected to recognize Palestine in the upcoming UN summit, chief among them, of course, the United Kingdom, France, Canada, Australia, and other prominent Western countries, which, of course, is a breakthrough for Palestinian recognition. This could increase the amount of countries that recognize Palestine to about almost 160 countries, which is basically the vast majority of the world. As of now, only about 147 countries recognize Palestine. However, these measures are not sufficient. These major Western powers, namely European powers, have to take action against the Israelis, namely imposing sanctions, if they wish to actually pressure Israel to stop what it's doing in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, to stop the annexation train in its tracks, since Israel is now threatening to annex the West Bank in response to the recognition, and also to stop the genocide in Gaza. And Israel can basically acts with impunity and can bear the consequences, or bears no consequences, of its actions due to the unlimited support it has from the United States. So to counterbalance that, the European Union, which is one of Israel's largest trade partners, needs to take action and needs to impose sanctions. Recognition is not enough.
Right. And what do you think, Mohammed, do you think there can be any changes that can be made while Palestine is going to attend only online, since their visas was rejected or revoked?
You see, we have seen a very sad precedent that is happening in this session of the UN General Assembly. Since the foundation of the United Nations in 1945, never once was a state delegation, denied the right to attend the functions of the UN General Assembly summit. This is something that is unprecedented. The United States has violated the Headquarters Treaty of 1947. It ratified with the United Nations which basically obligates the United States to grant visas and facilitate the entry of delegations that will attend the functions and the events of the United Nations. And as you know, Asuma, Palestine is an observer state in the United Nations, so it has a legal status in the UN. Also, Palestine is a member state of several specialized UN agencies, like UNICEF, for example. And also, they are a member of the International Criminal Court and the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. So it's quite baffling that the Americans are taking such arbitrary actions against the Palestinian delegation, denying the Palestinian president and his accompanying delegation and Palestinian officials, including the foreign minister, the right to attend the UN summit, and preventing them from entering the United States. This brings into question the status of the United States as a law-abiding state. Apparently, they do violate international law on every venue, not only on this one. And also, it brings into question their status as a supposed mediator between the Israelis and the Palestinians and the key guarantor of the peace process, or so they style themselves in the Palestine-Israel conflict. So far, they haven't been impartial. They have been completely biased to the Israelis, and now they are going as far as to prevent the Palestinian president and his delegation from attending the UN summit. And he will give his speech virtually through video, which is rather pathetic. This scene will be a testament of the failure and the inability of the UN system to protect itself, and in the inability of international law to impose its will. Now international law and the international institutions and the United Nations itself, which is the embodiment of international law and the society of an international community that is supposedly governed by laws, now it embodies the complete destruction of this world order, supposed world order that we will repeatedly told is the true state of affairs.
Right. Thank you very much, Mohammed, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we stay in the region now. Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said that he will raise the issue of what he called Israel's massacres in Gaza when he addresses the United Nations General Assembly next week. During his visit, Erdogan is also scheduled to meet Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa, and a rare engagement as regional dynamics continue to shift. Let's listen into what the leaders have said.
Konuşmamda Gazze'deki insani felaket ve mezalimi özellikle gündeme getireceğim. 80. Genel Kurulu diğerlerinden farklı kılan özelliği birçok ülkenin Filistin devletini tanıyacak olmasıdır. Biz bu tanıma kararlarının iki devletli çözümün hayata geçirilmesine ivme kazandırmasını temenni ediyoruz. 25 Eylül Perşembe günü ise Washington'a geçerek değerli dostum Sayın Trump'la bir görüşme gerçekleştireceğiz. Görüşmemizde ticaret, yatırım, savunma sanayi başta olmak üzere ikili işbirliğimizi güçlendirecek konuları değerlendireceğiz.
Now we go back to our guest discussion with Mohammed Osman. He's an international relations specialist, joins us live from Cairo. Thank you very much, Mohammed, for staying with us. Now looking at President Erdogan, who is set to meet Ahmed al-Sharaa of Syria, it seems like he is meeting him every chance he gets. Oh, so what's in it for Erdogan or Turkey in Syria, and what is their relationship like right now, and what is it for Syria to make better relations with President Erdogan?
Of course, Turkey is a regional power in the Middle East, and it has a vested interest in Syria. Turkey was involved in the Syrian civil war for the better part of 14 years. Of the entirety of the civil war, they supported the rebels and the militant movements that were fighting the Assad regime, and one of them, of course, was HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is the movement that Ahmed al-Sharaa led, which was basically back then, his name was back then, acronym was Abu Muhammad al-Julani, and HTS was the local affiliate of Al-Qaeda in Syria. However, of course, Ahmed al-Shara became a president, and HTS, at least on paper, is not there anymore. However, along the way, including in his terroristic phase and now in his presidential phase, he was supported and he was basically adopted by the Turkish government. And Turkey, the Turks were the patrons of the current regime, one way or the other. So, of course, Turkey has invested heavily in toppling the Assad regime and installing Ahmed al-Shara and his administration as president. And now it is working tirelessly to prop up the government of Ahmed al-Shara, especially that now the new government is facing immense challenges, especially that after the state basically mostly collapsed after the fall of the Assad regime, the economy is in tatters. The country was under a multitude of international sanctions. So Turkey did work tirelessly to lift, to convince the Europeans and the Americans to lift sanctions from Syria, and this largely materialized. And also they are supporting Syria, the new Syrian government, in its attempt to impose control over the entirety of the regions of Syria. However, so far they have not been successful, as the Kurds control about 1/3 of the country, but basically the Kurds represented by the Syria Democratic Forces, the SDF, and they do have demands of autonomy and self-rule. The same goes for the Druze minority in the south, which suffered a huge onslaught by the current regime in Syria, where about 2,000 people were massacred, mostly civilians, due to the sectarian nature of the current government, which is basically an Islamist jihadist government, or to that affiliation they tend to affiliate themselves. So Turkey is attempting, and of course Israel is taking advantage of all of this chaos and sows more chaos inside Syria with the aim of grabbing more Syrian territories and occupying even more Syrian territories and ensuring that Syria remains a weak, quasi-failed state. And they do that by supporting the Druze factions in the south. So Turkey is right now attempting with all of its tools and all of its power to stabilize the regime of Ahmed al-Shara and to ensure that he will be able to function as a stable government of Syria that safeguards the interests of Turkey, especially that the Kurdish threat, the secessionist threat in Turkey, even though the PKK did disarm and surrender, however, the separatist movement did not entirely dissipate. And for Syria and for Turkey, the establishment of any quasi-independent or autonomous region, the Kurdish region in Syria, is a red line that they will not allow. And therefore, they will stay invested in Syria to ensure that no threats comes out of Syria, and at the same time, to take advantage of the vast natural resources of Syria and enhance Turkey's position in the region as a regional power.
Right. Thank you very much, Mohammed Osman, for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Now we move on. The Israeli military has said that 2 rockets have been launched from the northern Gaza Strip at the southern coastal Israeli city of Ashdod. According to the Israel Defense Forces, 1 rocket has been intercepted by air defenses, while the second has struck an open area. Sirens have been heard in Ashdod's eastern neighborhoods and nearby towns. There are no immediate reports of injuries or major damage in the attack. Rocket fire from Gaza, especially long-range attacks with multiple projectiles, have been increasingly rare as the war has progressed, as launching capabilities have been hindered by the IDF's ground offensive. The last time rockets were fired at Ashdod was back in April this year. Meanwhile, a deadly overnight strike by Israel has damaged an apartment building in Gaza City. According to Gaza's civil defense agency, the attack has killed 6 people and wounded 15 others. Let's listen in to what the victim's relative has said about this recent strike.
سمعنا انفجار وخبر نزلنا هان لقينا الوضع هذا ولادي نايمين هان لقيناهم نستشهد الام والطفل والطفله وجنين كانوا في بطنها لقيناه معزوق غاب وزوجها حالته خطيره خدناها المستشفى انبطرت الرجل بتاعته لعنا صواريخ ولعنا وانا اصريت اقسم بالله العظيم اقسمت 100 مره ما احنا طالعين على الجنوب الا غير نتم هان يا بنموت يا بنعيش في هالبلد هذه.
Israel's offensive is the latest phase in the war in Gaza. According to Gaza's health authorities, more than 65,000 Palestinians have been killed during this war, which has also spread famine and displaced most of the population there. Now we move on to our next news. In Russia's Belgorod region, one woman has been killed after a Ukrainian shell struck a residential house, as confirmed by the regional governor of Belgorod, Vyacheslav Gladkov. Belgorod, which borders with Ukraine, has repeatedly come under attack since Russia and Ukraine's war started in February 2022. Local authorities report frequent shelling, drone strikes, and evacuations in border villages. While Moscow insists its military campaign is aimed at securing Russian territory, Kyiv has increasingly targeted border areas like Belgorod as part of its broader effort to push back against Russia's offensive. The latest incident underscores the ongoing civilian toll of a war that continues to spill over both sides of the front line. Now, for this discussion, we are joined by Major General retired Gigi Dwivedi. He's a defense analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us. And now, what does this increasing civilian toll and continuation of this war indicates about the evolving strategies from both sides?
Well, Asuma, currently, if you look at the war, it's in a state of stalemate. The war is being orchestrated in the two domains. One is the aerial warfare, where Russians have been continuously targeting the infrastructure, energy installations, and also the civilians casualties inside Ukraine. And second is the ground warfare, because currently the front line is more or less stable, but Russian efforts are to make tactical gains so that they are able to grab as much territory as possible. And Belgorod, you just mentioned, such locations are targeted of the frontline warfare, because small tactical gains are made, especially by the Russian forces, because they want to legitimize the areas that they are occupied. So therefore, such tactical battles are going on, but they come at a very heavy cost, because the Russian army has taken very heavy casualties to make small gains. It's like a meat grinder war. The very little, difference is being made on the ground, and these are the mass assault. It is the attrition warfare, and such locations, they become targets. But if I can say in a very summarized manner, the war today is in stalemate, while the aerial strikes are going on by the Russians, but also simultaneously certain ground tactical battles are also on. But on the whole, it appears that President Putin is in no mood to end the war anytime soon, and even the small gains are treated as victory by the Russian leadership, especially President Putin, no matter at what cost they are making these small gains. Asuma.
And Major General, how are we to differentiate between the information that's coming in from Russia and Ukraine? As you also mentioned that this seems like a stalemate situation right now, but we always hear this information warfare that's being used from both sides. How are we supposed to differentiate between what is correct, or what are we supposed to take of these information?
Well, information warfare is very much part of the modern warfare, because primarily it gives you two kind of payoffs. One is that you get the moral ascendancy, or you get a moral upper hand, and secondly you demoralize the opponent, and also you try to paint a picture to the global polity. But the point is that on the ground it's very difficult to make out as to what exactly are the gains or losses. But if you take a larger look and through the military eye, one can make out that the gains are very insignificant. They are not actually making any major difference on the conduct of the war. Yes, both the sides are engaged, both the sides want to maintain the sanctity of the front lines, and therefore, even a small tactical gain is blown up out of proportion as a major victory. So, currently, the war is being fought at the tactical level. There's no major strategic, offensive or maneuvers being undertaken. So all I can say is that information warfare claims more than actually what is achieved on the ground, and the international polity or those who are looking at the war closely need to understand what exactly the ground position. But suffice to say, there's no major gains being made on the either side, and the small gains are being played out as major victories to basically augment the information warfare, both for their own polity as also for the enemy. Asuma.
Thank you very much, Major General Gigi Jivedi, for joining us and sharing your insight. Now we move on to North America. A rare U.S. House delegation is visiting China, the first since 2019, as both sides seek to ease strained ties. The bipartisan group, led by Democratic Representative Adam Smith, is meeting Premier Li Keqiang at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. The visit comes just days after Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping have held a phone call amid tensions over trade, semiconductors, TikTok, the South China Sea, and Taiwan are on the rise. Smith, a former chair of the House Armed Services Committee, says dialogue is crucial even when disagreements remain. He further noted that engaging China does not mean endorsing its actions. The trip follows a recent conversation between U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and his Chinese counterpart Dong Jun, who discussed the importance of avoiding conflict while protecting strategic interests in the Asia-Pacific. This visit marks a test of whether Washington and Beijing can find common ground after years of escalating tensions. Now, for this discussion, we're joined by retired Major General A.K. Sivachi. He's a defense expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General A.K. Sivachi, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, looking at China and U.S. and their ties, what do you think, what will be discussed and what is the common ground for them to maybe ease the tensions between them?
No doubt. As far as the U.S. and China are concerned, there is a lot of trade which is going between both of them. U.S. has put tariff more than 100% to China, but China bounced back by stopping sending of semiconductor and chips and also magnet, which China produced almost 85 to 90%. And per force, U.S. has to reduce the tariff. Now, the point is in threefold. One is that the U.S. wants to engage with China. They want to have a discussion, basically a personal meeting with Donald Trump and Xi Jinping in future. They are interested in to ensure the smooth flow of semiconductor, the chips as well as the magnet. The supply chain should not be affected from China to US. And another very important point is the aggressive posture of China in Indo-Pacific. That is also a cause of concern for the US, because the way the Chinese are trying to become extra taking initiative against Philippines, they are very, very aggressive. So the Quad was made due to that only, that which has the principle of free, open and inclusive Indo-Pacific with the freedom of navigation, rule-based international order and maintaining territorial integrity and sovereignty of all nations, including minor island nations. But of late, the China is not been coordinating that or is responding to it. It is trying to do what it does, and there is a fear that it may also try to do some mischief in Taiwan. So all these factors are there where Donald Trump is very keen that they must have some contact with China, and there should be a meeting in near future between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. I suppose that is one of the main reasons that why the four lawmakers from the US has now gone to China and trying to engage. Now, in fact, the engagement is in a manner that even the NSA of the US, Hegseth, he is also spoken to his counterpart in China. So overall, I suppose it is an engagement. in no way it shows that the Americans are now taking a back seat or they are basically now on defensive. It is just to engage China. After all, China is one of the superpower. As on today, there is no unipolar, there are multipolar, and therefore it is important for US also to engage China, which in future will be beneficial for US as well the world as such, because Russia-Ukraine war, if it has to stop, the China has to play a very, very positive role. And China can only play a positive role in case the US engage with China. I suppose that's also one of the reasons. So I will say that certainly a positive step, peace should prevail in the world. And in case the US and China has a bone humming or ice breaking, and also that Donald Trump and Xi Jinping meet in near future, I think it is good for the overall the peace of the world.
Yes, thank you very much for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you. And now we stay on this topic. US President Donald Trump has publicly called on the Justice Department to take swift action against his political opponents in what critics say is a blow to the agency's independence. On Saturday, President Trump has addressed Attorney General Pam Bondi on social media, expressing frustration over the lack of legal moves against Californian Senator Adam Schiff and New York Attorney General Letitia James, both Democrats accused by Trump ally of mortgage fraud. Trump has insisted we cannot delay any longer. Just a day earlier, he fired Eric Seibert, and the federal prosecutor overseeing the investigation into James after Seibert reportedly said there was not enough evidence to press charges. President Trump dismissed that, saying that there is a great case supported by many legal experts. Also, late Saturday, Trump named White House aide Lindsey Halligan, who has reviewed Smithsonian content for divisive or partisan narratives, to take over Seibert's role. Critics warn these moves further erode the traditional independence of the Justice Department. Now, for this discussion, we go back to retired Major General A.K. Sibachi. He's a defense expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, what are the implications of President Trump demanding or President Trump forcing his views on his Justice Department?
You know, the point is that this is not a good sign of democracy. As far as the US is concerned, they have a vibrant democracy. If as the president of US, it put pressure on the Department of Justice, and through his basically the administrator, he put pressure on the law department and also the judiciary. I think that will be it will be end of democracy. And this is what Trump is doing. Wherever there are governors which are from a Democratic Party, which are not in agreement to the views and the policies of Donald Trump, they are openly challenging him, and he wants that strong action to be taken by legal department. Whereas it's very difficult to take any action because there has to be some concrete evidence wherein you find an act of omission commission. So there is a sort of a difference of opinion between Donald Trump and his Justice Department and also the judiciary as to how do they perceive in a democracy in case if there is a different opinion, there can be a difference. But Donald Trump, as it is what Donald Trump is, is not ready to accept any different opinion, and anyone who is having a very different view and publicly go against him, he wants that judiciary and the Justice Department should take action. But certainly there is a lot of gap in that. It's not easy to take any action because legally you have to have a concrete evidence and proof. Then only you can take a person into the court or you can give him a suitable punishment. I suppose there is a difference in that. In democracy, you have to hear both the voices. There has to be a sort of opposition wherein they do a concrete and also you can say positive criticism. This is a part of democracy. But putting pressure on your judiciary as well as legal department is not good for a healthy democracy, and especially a country like US, which has, one can say, the oldest democracy, and wherein the human right is considered as one of the main factors, and judiciary is almost free there.
Yes, thank you very much, Major General, for joining us today and sharing your insight. Well, this is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.